Ignorance breeds violence, and just as knowledge and understanding are remedies for ignorance, empathy and sympathy are solutions for violence. Hi, my name is Robert Wilkinson, and that is my no violence statement. To explain this some, I believe violence stems from a mindset, an attitude. It comes from a way of thinking that it can solve our problems or benefit us in some way. So in a large part, I believe most violence can be arrested with the knowledge, simple truth, that violence begets violence and is never a solution to a problem. We can learn this just as we learn that 1 taken away from 1 is 0. Till then, when thoughts or feelings or violence begin to arise,
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
To focus on our breathing. If standing, we can sit down. We can pause for a moment. And having paused, we can direct our thoughts towards remembering that the one in front of us hurts and suffers, just as we hurt and suffer. That is, we can have sympathy, if not empathy, and empathy, if not sympathy.
That was beautifully said, Robert Wilkinson. The first question I have for you today is, how do you define yourself?
In short, I describe myself as a recovering idiot. And one day at a time, I try to avoid as much as I can thinking, speaking, and acting as the idiot.
Where did you grow up, and how does it relate to your past violent experience?
I've experienced a lot of violence in my life, both as a victim and a victimizer. Though I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, as I grew up, my family was constantly on the move. From Maryland to Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, Florida, all up and down the East Coast, and then some. Mostly in the poorest of neighborhoods, sometimes even living out of a car. But it's not where I grew up that I relate violence to my past. Rather, it's where I took myself. First, at a very young age, I'd taken to drugs and alcohol. At 13, well into the harder drugs, coke and heroin. Second, I'd taken to a mindset that women were little more than objects of men's desires. It is these two things, by and far, that I relate most of my past violence to. Not all, but most.
Who is your target audience?
As I've said, I've seen and experienced a lot of violence in my life. Violence comes in many shades, some much more darker than others. But for the violence I'm referring to here today, the audience is for men and women who are struggling with poverty and addiction, especially the men who have grown into a mindset of objectifying and or abusing women, whether it be physically, mentally, or emotionally. To explain a little, with my addiction, my existence centered around getting high and staying high. To this, I surrounded myself with other addicts, that is, men and women whose every act pretty much evolved around their drug use. And it's the women who are stuck in this nightmare who I'm speaking of. For the violence I've seen and shamefully have committed myself against these women is absolutely horrible, depraving. These women chained to poverty and addiction are typically not only subject to the whims and desires, however degrading they may be, of any man who comes along with a little money or dope to offer, but so too, almost on a regular basis, subjected to the bent-up emotions, mostly of a violent nature, of these men. To be clear, a man fighting, struggling, and raging against addiction and all the chaos that comes with it, not to mention the factors that took him into the addiction, is not always the nicest person to be around. And as often as not, it's the women who are around them who get the blunt of their frustration, hate, anger, violence. Mentally, physically, and emotionally, they are abused, frankly, on a daily basis. But women thrown into poverty and caught up into addiction don't need the men in their lives degrading and abusing them. The addiction itself is already doing that. These women need help, all that they can get. And if the men who are around them can't help them, then at the very least, we should not turn them into objects of our base desires, emotions, or sufferings. They deserve better. We all deserve better. And we all need to have a little sympathy or empathy. And so, this is why my message of no violence is for the men in these women's lives.
Why does your no violence statement resonate with you?
I've experienced the horrors of addiction and the mindset of abuse in a great many other shades. These are terrible, terrible things, and nobody, absolutely nobody, should have to experience that. And I know that there's a lot of good going on these days to help those as the bullying, sexism, and the overall abuse that so many women are subjected to. But I think some of our most vulnerable women, those chained down to poverty and addiction, are mostly being overlooked. For I hear a lot, a whole lot, yet I don't hear anything about these women. So in the end, I used to be a part of the problem. Today, I want to be a part of the solution, and that's why all of this resonates with me.
When did you first hear of the Starlight Peace Project?
Only a few weeks ago, actually.
Have you ever promoted no violence before, and if so, how?
Outside of speaking to people on a one-to-one basis, I never really promoted or been a part of a movement, as to no violence.
So, what would you promote as an alternative to violence?
Knowledge and thinking. This is what I promote as an alternative to violence. And when thoughts or feelings of violence come on to us, that we sit, breathe, and reflect that violence is never ever a solution to a problem, but sympathy and empathy is always a solution to violence.
In what ways do you promote no violence in this prison setting?
I promote no violence in prison by speaking and practicing what I consider to be an alternative to violence. That is, what I've expressed about knowledge, thinking, and then sitting, breathing, and reflecting, and about having sympathy and empathy.
Do you have any final words for this Starlight Peace Project audience?
As for the men, all men, I say first, sympathy and empathy are solutions to violence. It's not the only solution, but it is a solution.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Second, about objectifying, oppressing women. Please, take a moment out. Listen, really listen to what women are saying today, and then ask yourself, am I contributing in any way whatsoever to what so many women are talking about? And two, regardless of how you answer this, ask yourself, can I do more to understand, raise, or address these issues? There are a lot of women, vast numbers, speaking of these issues. And it's not just the women who are stuck in poverty and addiction. Far from it. So that means that there are a lot of men whose way of thinking simply isn't right. So I ask you, where do you stand? Are you part of the problem or part of the solution? Sitting on the fence is no longer an option. Violence is not an option. As for the women, I'd like to remind them that ignorance breeds violence. And just as education and understanding are remedies for ignorance, sympathy and empathy are solutions for violence. Second, to every woman who reads this and every woman beyond, I want to say I am sorry. I am very, very sorry. For so many years, I not only objectified, oppressed, and abused women, but in many ways actually promoted these wrongs. In my mind, I thought this was a natural course of conduct for men. Today I know better, and I'm ashamed of who I was, of the life I lived, and the ignorance I promoted. And though I don't know how exactly to go about it, each day I hope I'm going to put one foot in front of the other and trying to be a part of the solution here. Thank you for listening.